Nicolette Staten. I'm the Analytics and Innovation Manager in the Office of Performance and Data Analytics.
And I'm Dan Fortenberry, the Parking Division Manager for the City of Cincinnati.
So we're here this morning. If you were at the opening session and heard the city manager, today a RFP was released that seeks to create seamless mobility and a personalized transportation model. And so we're asking input from the community to develop this RFP and kind of bring this to life, aggregating the various forms of transportation throughout the city, whether it's tank or sorta, streetcar, the red bike. We have Jason Barron here from Red Bike. Thank you for coming. Any form of transportation that there is in Cincinnati, we're looking to aggregate this into one simple web-based tool. And so that was released this morning, but just before we get into that, I do want to cover a bit of the RFP process, because as we get to the question and answer period at the end of this, we're not really going to be able to answer too much of this, because now that it's been released, it is in the RFP process, and you will need to contact the city purchasing department to submit any questions about the actual RFP. We can answer questions about the process. We can answer questions about what we do and what our departments do, but as for the details of the RFP, we cannot get into that, because that all needs to be public information. So right now, we're going to have a community engagement session on January 5th-ish, that's a tentative date, where we hope to essentially do a sort of flip the pitch, and we hope to do this at Union Hall, down and over the Rhine, where Centrifuge is located. And what we'll do is we'll pose the problem that's issued in the RFP, and then seek input from you all and the startup community in Cincinnati to kind of respond to that. So that is tentatively going to be January 5th. RFP submissions will be due January 19th. And so you have until now and then to kind of look over and develop a proposal. And we hope that a winning proposal should be announced by March 5th. Between the 19th and the 5th and the selection process, that's our contract negotiating period. So we hope to announce the winner on March 5th. As I said, all questions must be submitted in writing to purchasing. The deadline to submit questions will be January 12th. And we will respond to those questions as a final addendum, any final questions as an addendum, on January 15th. How to submit to it is can all be found on purchasing's website and in the RFP itself, but it'll be submitted to purchasing, and then the selection committee will get it. So that's the background, the RFP process, and so let's get into the why we are doing this. And Dan, do you want to talk a little bit about the why?
Certainly. I come from the parking industry, so looking at transportation and more as a trip. And we know that a trip starts with parking and kind of ends with parking. But the parking industry and the transportation industry have been poking at this idea for a long time now, and they've put together certain legs of what we're trying to accomplish and what we expect to accomplish here in Cincinnati and this region. The idea is that when a person has a trip, if they're from out of town, this RFP, this offering, will solve for that. Meaning what they'll be able to do prior to their trip is to use one of the tools, either web-based or on their phone, and what they will plan their trip. They will be able to locate, reserve, and pay for parking, which reduces the anxiety of coming into an area which they have no idea where they're going. It reduces the cruising on the street. It reduces the vehicle pedestrian accidents, the vehicle accidents. So understanding that if a person has their trip planned, especially the parking portion of it prior to coming, we've solved a big problem. We've cut down on a lot of congestion and other issues. The next part of this is the transportation itself within the region. We know that if we can start connecting and make transportation seamless in Cincinnati, that we can connect different people to different modes and different expectations, and they can personalize their own trip. A person in a different socioeconomic level may be looking for the most or the least expensive way to get to work or to a place of entertainment. A person who's in a hurry may be looking for the very closest, and their cost is not a concern. We know that now that with the idea about health, we can connect people through the red bike. We can actually show them how to walk. So our expectation is that the successful bidder will come together with come to us with an idea of how to connect the transportation service providers in the region and connect them in a way that individuals can optimize or choose how they want to travel. So parking being probably the beginning of this, but then transportation being how they want to get around. A story is simple, that they're in Dayton or in Toledo and they're coming to Cincinnati. They have found, reserved, and paid for their parking. They have a meeting over the Rhine. They want to see the Freedom Center, but they also want to make sure they exercise. So they get here, and this app will take them, this tool will take them to their parking space, which is already reserved and paid for, and then they will grab a red bike and they will just make their way around town because they want to make sure they get their steps in or their exercise in for the day. They will then direct them through whatever mode they choose to their appointment and back to their vehicle and back home. And having this planned out prior to their trip to Cincinnati is something that other cities are attempting, but no one has perfected this. So we're looking forward to somebody in the innovation community and the development community to come and be able to solve for this.
So this is a joint effort between the Department of Community and Economic Development and the Office of Performance and Data Analytics. And Lee and Nicolette, do you want to get into some of the data aspects and how we'll house this data, what items we will aggregate and what items we're asking?
Sure. So really the gist of this RFP is aggregating data in a way that is usable for consumers. So really creating some kind of tool that is usable for people who, to Dan's point, are looking for transit options in the city. So in addition to all of our, as a side note, all of all the RFPs the city has are available on our open data portal, including this one. And really the point of this RFP is to use a lot of the data that we're pushing out. So part of what we'll be doing on our end is supplying a lot of the transit data that we're looking for use from on our open data portal. So we're going to work with some of our partners to make sure that we're getting our parking data. We're going to get like SORTA data, other transit data that is pushed out there just so that it's all like living in one place. A successful applicant or a successful developer will then use that, look at maybe other data sources. We're not specifying, what. We haven't really set the parameters very tightly, but that's kind of our contribution to this. So our role is aggregating data that we can as a city, pushing it out there, making sure that it's automatically updating, that it's high quality, that the process is automated, that we're all, that everyone has equal access to that. We are well equipped to do that. And then the next step is, a developer taking advantage of that and using that.
So basically how it works is the city will aggregate the public side, and then in the scoring process, in your proposal, as many of the private side, whether it's Uber, Lyft, other taxi cab services, other private parking garage services that you're able to bring together in this web-based tool, you will get scored based on your ability to bring in those private data in addition to the public data that we will be able to supply from our end. So that's kind of how that will work. So with that, there is a presentation attached to the agenda that you can find either on your phones or on your computer. Sorry, we thought that we'd have a little more.
There was an AV issue. You can blame me. We did upload the presentation to the schedule page, so on the schedule you can access it there. Great. I'll take the blame. I'm it was my fault.
I will also post our presentation onto choosecincy.com, which is our website, and the RFP is available either on our website, choosecincy.com, or as Lee said,
on the City of Cincinnati's open data portal. So that's data.cincinnati-oh.gov.
So can we answer any questions?
Yeah,
As far as this is, I think, a complement to those and not intended to replace them. It's just another service that provides an all-inclusive. But if you still want to use the Cincy Easy Park, Cincy Easy Ride, you will still have that option.
So for our customers, we put a lot out at them. Seems like the market's getting a lot saturated, and there's too many options available. If you have to go one app to look at your direction, where to go, and then have to go to another to pay, it doesn't really make sense.
Right, so that's really the goal of what we're putting out. We're trying to create something that, number one, isn't necessarily an app. There's a lot of apps out there, but apps, of course, require a download, and it's a lot more clicking, and you have to it requires user engagement. So we're really looking to create a tool or have someone create for us a tool. We are not creating it. We're looking for someone else to do this, obviously, that kind of as seamlessly as possible integrates all of those aspects. We're trying to have one consolidated user experience. Any other questions?
Yeah, maybe to follow up on that question, you mentioned the engagement question. So maybe can you say a few words about what does success look like for you in terms of engagement with the people you're trying to reach, the consumers? How will you determine success there?
I think a few ways. Success, I think, is obviously determined by use, right? So do you mean the developer community we're trying to reach, or do you mean users of? Yeah, so I think sheer volume, right? Who is using it, where they're using it. Location, particularly in Cincinnati, is a pretty good proxy for diversity in terms of background, et cetera. So I think looking at how much use it's getting, who's using it, where they're using it, and getting some really meaningful data back from it. So from the city's perspective, the investment that or the return on the investment for us would be seeing the data that would come back from this. Where are people using different kinds of transit? Can we sort of discern who and why, and are there different times? Getting some of that information for us would be, and getting enough that we can do something with it, would be a pretty good metric for success.
And to add on that, within the RFP process as well, there is community engagement, and by that, it's engaging not only the developer community who is going to be asked to make this tool, but also the community at large, for them to give us input on what they want to see included in it, so that we can have those conversations with the developers that do submit proposals to it. So there is a community engagement portion to the RFP process in general. Yes.
With the phase 2 of the Smart Cincy bid coming out sometime in the future, it seems like that was envisioned to be the group or the solution that tackles things like you're doing today. At least that's what some things Harry Black said in his presentations about Smart Cincy RFP. So it seems like this is coming before that stage.
So I think that, I appreciate the observation. I think that there's sort of two means that are getting at the same end, right? So the end is, how do we make the city of Cincinnati the smartest city that it can be? I think that the Smart Cities RFP, the initial one that the city put out, is about building that infrastructure, right? How do we figure out what we need to do, what infrastructure we need to bring in to initially create Wi-Fi within this region and make that accessible to people. The second RFP, this is really about data aggregation and making something that's usable everywhere in the city. So it's not about how do we get public Wi-Fi, it's about how do we use data that's already out there to create a user experience for people in our city that makes transit a more seamless process. Does that answer your question? Okay.
So as part of collecting data, if I'm planning my trip and I want to go to certain places, I'm also interested in what specials are there or what is happening at the venue. Is there a plan to incorporate part of that within the data feed, or is that something that's in the
I think that's the type of question that we probably cannot comment on. That needs to be part of the RFP process through purchasing.
Are there examples of other cities that are doing this well that you're looking at?
I think Dan can comment best on that.
Yeah, and actually, all ideas are, from another idea. And being in the parking industry, we get exposed to a lot of interrelationship with transportation. And yes, there are data analytics providers, large companies that are doing this. They've started with just being able to find parking and then ventured in. I know Denver and LA both have applications that are labeled, and this is just public, knowledge, is that Go Denver and Go LA, which allow people to come in and kind of plan their trips. However, their applications and their tools are just kind of mainly linking some back end, so it's not what we're really looking to do. We're looking for something quite a bit more seamless, and they don't include the end-to-end trip experience that we're looking to do here. So yes, the community's out there. There are apps, and if you were to spend 15 minutes outside this room, you would find some things that kind of mirror what we're doing, but not in the comprehensive way that we're looking to do. And as just to Lee's point, I want to just the return for us and providing this opportunity to the community is that we get to start making really, really good, or even, let's not to waste the word, smart decisions about how we build our infrastructure and what we do in the future. So yeah, there's some folks doing parts of it, but not what we're looking to do.
How do you get people to use this? I mean, I understand that there's value for you, but how do you get the consumers to go to a website to plan their trip when they're coming to Cincinnati? What's the value proposition for consumers?
Well, I think the one-stop shop aspect of it and being able to do the entire trip planning is a very attractive piece to the consumer, and it's all going to be about marketing on our end, and then working with the other groups to market this and really get everybody excited and get behind it and reach out into as many areas as we can throughout the region to really drive a marketing campaign for it.
So, you all mentioned earlier that this wouldn't actually be a mobile app. If it's not a mobile app, what kind of tool is it? And how flexible or fluid is that tool? If a person plans their trip from A to Z, all the way to their return back home, but then they get here and want to do something different, there's something going on that they may not have been made aware of prior to planning that trip, but then they're supposed to be parked across town in an hour.
Right.
How do they make those adjustments?
I would say that it's not necessarily not an app. It's a web-based mobile tool. It's whatever the developer wants to propose to us.
We didn't call it an app because people always think an app is like a mobile app. And at this point, getting people to engage with an app is a lot more clicks, right? You have to go download it, you have to get it, you have to let it upload, it sits on your device. So we really wanted to open this up so that we could say, look, it could be like a website or just some kind of tool. There's a lot of ways that people, sort of share information or use information, especially now that like web browsers and phones can do a lot more. But I think to your point, a lot of the questions that you're asking without answering any of them really specifically get to how fresh is the data that's coming in. And for our part, the data that the city is providing, we're going to be trying to provide data as real time as we can. I think really the value add on a developer side would be what other data do you have access to, or are you sort of bringing in, and how real time is it?
But yeah, I would say if you're a developer and you want to submit a proposal for an app, you're more than welcome. So. Yeah, that's why we wanted to reach out and really engage the developer community. We want creative ideas. We want to see, what you all think it should look like, and so that'll be part of the process of the selection committee.
I just have a question. And you guys are talking more on the development and how the city's going to put things that are happening in the city on. Is there a way that businesses or local businesses could put events that are happening at their place onto this app, or is it strictly city ran on what goes into it? Not app, but
No, I mean, I think that would be something that would be up to whoever's developing it, but we certainly are encouraging people to use data outside of ours. Really what we're saying is, look, we're going to put all this data on our open data portal. It's really high quality, it's real time, it's good. Use it, use other data, whatever other data you think is pertinent or relevant to building something like this, and we'll kind of go from there. So certainly not limited in scope. Really, what we're trying to say is, we're putting a lot of this out here. Use our open data portal, use our open data. It's there, it's really great. It's a major economic asset, and whatever else you can incorporate, that's great. Any other questions, comments?
What are some of the most interesting or surprising or shocking even insights that you've noticed in recent data research? Anything shocking on Cincinnati Insights?
Oh God. So let me do a quick plug. So if you haven't been on our website, it's called Cincinnati Insights. If you just plug it into the browser on your mobile phone, you'll be able to find it. It's all mobile friendly because most people use mobile phones. So we have, I think now like 47 different dashboards with fully interactive data sets. So I'd say that probably one of our most startling or consistently shocking sets of data is our heroin tracker. So we have on our on Cincinnati Insights a dashboard that looks at computer-aided dispatch data, which is every time that a first responder gets dispatched. It uses that data to track the number of heroin overdoses that were dispatched to in the city. So that's pretty staggering because although we anonymize the data based on like address and everything, you can still see it at street level. So you can see by neighborhood, time of the day, hour of the day of the week. That's a pretty startling insight because it sort of shows that this is something that's happening across our city. It's happening everywhere. It's happening at all different times of day, and it's a big problem. So I'd say if you haven't checked out Cincinnati Insights, you should, which, there's a lot of information on there. It's all maps. You can, type in your street, see what's happening where you live, sort of zoom out and see what's happening in other neighborhoods. I think that's at least the most interesting thing that we're doing with data at this point.
Can you only track heroin within the city limits?
Correct, because we only have access to, it's based on what we dispatch. So it's scalable and replicable anywhere. Every jurisdiction has CAD data. Every jurisdiction with a fire and police department has CAD data. So it's totally replicable anywhere. It's easy to do. We're happy to talk to anyone about doing it. We kind of built it so that it could be replicated and scaled, but our data source is only within the city of Cincinnati.
I live in the city, and I've been to your website, and I love all the work that you've been doing to make that data visible. My question would be, in relation even to that last question, is what efforts are you making to collaborate with other data sources or other providers to combine that data in order to make available intelligence that is even more rich because it has collaborated data? And related to that is, what mechanism exists to help encourage even new data sets to be created that might not be in place today that serve the city's operation? You're making data visible from operations where you're already making that data. What about new data?
Sure. So I think that's kind of let me answer that in two parts. The first part, what are we doing in terms of collaborating with other data sources? So the first thing I would say is government collects just a lot of data. Government has more data than like almost anyone. So our primary goal is to get everything that we have within government and make sure that we have cleaned it, we've processed it, we've centralized it, and we're making it accessible via the open data portal. As far as collaboration, we're happy to host other partner data sets on our portal, but I think before we can talk about how we integrate data in, I see our role in government as making government data accessible. I think it's up to the developer community and the innovation community to say, we're gonna pull this data from other places and start to generate insights. I think that's something that falls within the scope of civic tech. We certainly are partners for that. We believe strongly in that. We are about that, but there are 5 of us, and our job is really to make sure that we are really good stewards of government data. So that, I think, is kind of to your first question. As far as collecting additional data, we're always looking at either new ways to collect data or new ways to understand the data that we already have. So we're constantly, either whether it's like buying software, buying tools or applications, we're constantly collecting new information about the city from citizens, using things around us with the advent of, the smart devices. That's obviously, it's a new level for that. But I'd say, again, we really focus on getting all that government data cleaned and processed and centralized and out there to make sure that it's usable for people. Every time that government does anything, any transaction government has is a data point. And a lot of those transactions are really rich, and there's a lot of stuff that you can get from that. So I think I want to emphasize our role is really to make sure that we're providing that to as many people as we can.
But to bring it full circle, I think that's what this RFP is also representing, is a collaboration and new data sets. We've worked collaboratively with the leadership of Red Bike, of Sorta, of Tank, of OKI on this RFP and the ideas behind it. And so I think this is a prime example moving forward of how we can do that, and in an environment that hopefully will produce a result that will be beneficial to the entire community. So with that, I think we are out of time. So I want to thank you all for coming and hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.